Welcome back. This video will explain how to use the Financial Tracking and Reports module. Because we have so much to cover in this particular video, I'm going to go a little bit faster than normal. If you miss something, please feel free to pause or play back a particular section. There are a number of ways to get to the Financial Tracking module. One is to come up to the Scripts menu and go to script number 20. Another one is to come to the Invoicing module and click the Financial Tracking button right there. You'll also see the Financial Tracking button from a variety of invoice spots here. Now, if you don't see the Financial Tracking button, that means that you may not have sufficient rights, and please ask your administrator to help you with that. So let's go ahead and take a quick look. There are three tabs in this area here. The Key Performance Indicator Reports button, where we'll spend most of our time, our older legacy reports, and we'll cover that very briefly. And then for the future, in our next phase, we're going to have a nicer dashboard where you can see a variety of different graphs on the screen at one time. But we're going to focus most of our attention on the Key Performance Indicator Reports. As you have maybe seen in another video, we have our financial module consists of three separate tables. The invoicing table, and that invoice, as you know, can have one or more different line items or charges. So those line items are stored in the line item section. You also can have one or more payments, and those are stored in the payment list. So we have a variety of different kinds of reports that are available. Let's again go look at the financial tracking area. We'll start with the legacy reports and just take a quick look here. Under the payment revenue area, I can click a little button. It's kind of hard to see that, but there's a drop-down arrow here. And this will allow you to sort or arrange your payment or revenue report based on the type of payment, or you could first sort by clinician or office and then the type of payment, or you can go a step further. Instead of just cash, check, or credit card, this type of payment too will give you whether it's a Visa, MasterCard, Discover, etc. So you could put in a start date and an end date up here, and then click the select range right there, and that will give you a report. Or this button right here again will give you a more detailed report. And to save time, if you just want last month's, last week's, yesterday's, this month's, etc., you can click one of those buttons right there. So play around with those. We'll take a quick look at this here. And actually that was too broad of a range, so we'll just have to wait. I should have narrowed it down to just a period of time, but as you'll see in just a moment, it's going to show us a series of payments or revenue that was received, and at the end of the whole report, which I won't look at because it's too long, you would see a grand total. Let's just narrow that down by saying last week's, if I have any here, and that's a little bit faster, cash, checks, and credit cards, etc. Again, you can go to the next page right here, and it'll show the Visa versus Discover, etc. So I'm going to press continue in the upper right. I don't want to print the report right here, so please try to remember that. If you press the continue button, then you have a better option. It asks if you'd like to print the document, and I'll say no thanks. But if it does, then it'll automatically reorient the page to the landscape view, which is designed for that particular report. Play around with some of these other reports here, but I will show you the reports on the right side of the screen. In this case, I can do last month's or this month's, etc., just like before, but I can run my report by either summary or detail. Well, the difference is this. Let's just do last week's sales as a summary, and it just gives me individual invoices. Not much detail as far as what was purchased, but it does tell me the total sales amount, the tax, the total amount with tax, the total paid, and the balance due, if any. So that doesn't give me a lot of detail, but that may be sufficient for your particular needs. Let's do the same thing with detail. When I click that button, it essentially gives me mini invoices. So it shows me some of that same information I saw before, but I also have the line items that are represented in this report. And that might be helpful for an administrator. So take a look again at these legacy reports, kind of play around with them and see what it is that you'd like. I will actually show you one other thing. Let's say that Daniel called and said, I need a tax statement to show all the different services and products that I purchased from you this year. So you'd put in a date range for Daniel and click this button here, and it'll give you a financial history for the patient that's currently on the screen. Keep in mind, you can click the magnifying glass right here and type in Jennifer, for example, SA, and that brings up Jennifer right there. If it pulled up more than one person, then I could go and see different invoices for them. But let's take a quick look and you'll see this is the purchasing overview for Jennifer and for that period of time, and something you can just print out. We'll press continue. Would you like to print it? No, I wouldn't in this case, but that way you can hand that to her and she can use that for her taxes. So finally, let's go to our key performance indicators. I'm also not going to spend much time in the area of invoice reports or payment reports, but let's just start by looking at the payment summary. Not very exciting, but I would put in a date range, and then I could summarize that report by office, by clinician, by payer type, things like that. And in this case, I have 6 items. Let me zoom in so you can see it a bit better. 6 items that are not categorized with any particular payment type. So I'll show you how to fix that in just a moment. Then we have 1 for the week that was cash, 6 for a check, and 3 for credit card. So to get back, let me zoom back out again, and I'll go back to the financial tracking button right here and just click yes. And then I'm going to show you how you can look at those payment types. And remember, 1 was cash. When I go to the list, I should have slowed down a little bit. When I come to this payment list, which is very similar or identical really to going to the payment list here, but when you go to that, it's already sorted or arranged, and that found set is the same that I was looking at before in the summary. But now I can see, okay, these here don't have any particular, I can adjust them if I happen to know what they were, and I can fill that in, and notice how they're automatically reshuffling. So I could adjust all those different payment types, and now when I go back to the summary, I can see that that report is updated to show the correct number of different payment types there. So let me zoom back out again. And so there are some different kinds of reports here. We can also export those as a summary, which just gives me the totals, kind of what you see there on the left, or we can export as detail. The detail export, let's just do that. I'll sort it by, let's see here, I'll just sort it by office location perhaps. And that will open up an Excel file and give me my different revenue. Hopefully you can see that on the screen all right. Give me my revenue by office. Notice that Boynton Beach, and you can manipulate this and play around with it in Excel if desired. So I'm going to close that. And let's go back to our financial tracking screen so I can get to the area that I really care about. In the center area here, you see a star next to the summary area. We're going to look at that in the line item list as well. But you also may want to play around with returns and exchanges, discounts, adjustments, and sales tax. We are now going to cover the area that I find most helpful for financial reporting, and that's under the line item summary. Well, so far it doesn't look that exciting, but I could put any date range in here based on last month, this quarter, whatever it is, or I can manually enter information such as 1/1/2000 through the end of the year, whatever it is. So once I put that information in there, that's step 1, as you can see that 1 period right there. Step 2 is to click here to select a summary report. Let's do that. And we have some options here. Now at the top, I can include only hearing instruments in this report. Sometimes that has value. You may not care. You want an overall look at how your month or year is going, and you don't necessarily care about batteries or accessories for that specific report. So we're going to do that in just a moment. But then we can look at how the report is displayed or sorted or arranged. In this case, we can sort by the assigned office, the clinician, the item, which is something like a hearing instrument, battery, accessory, service, diagnostic, whatever it is. The supplier would be Siemens, Starkey, Widex, Oticon, Phonak, Resound. I should have said Savantos. And the circuit would be any number of different circuits within those families of suppliers. BTE, CIC, ITE, etc. Technology would be entry level, mid-level, advanced. Obviously city and zip code makes sense. If you're recording your invoices, most people don't, but whether it's a cash or a finance invoice, we can track by that. The primary referral source, of course, would be something like direct mail or physician or a newspaper ad, and then the detail would be which physician, which specific physician, and which newspaper or letter did you send out. And then based on aging status, their payer type, the status of the invoice, or arrange things by month or year. Well, let's just start out by clicking supplier and get a look at what this report is going to look like here. So I've got a broad range here, and I've included, because I unchecked the hearing aid box, I have all my 92557s and all kinds of stuff off to the left there, and you can see that might be helpful. But there are times, again, where you may say, I think I'd rather just see hearing aids. So let's do that, and it's going to be a much shorter report here. It's also a little bit faster. Now, I'm counting quite a few items, so it takes a little while to pull up that report. Let's zoom in so we can see a little bit better. So here it's showing the total number of hearing instruments before returns. I don't have any returns in my sample data here, but realistically, you're obviously going to have returns. So it would show, let's say, 2 or 4 or 6 returns, and then your net, so your total units sold, your returns or exchanges, and then your net units would be right here. And that's breaking it down by supplier. So I see my Oticon, Phonak, Resound, etc. Then I'm seeing my percentage of units. I'm also seeing at the beginning, by the way, the number of line items, which generally doesn't have that much value, but our customers have asked us to put that in there. So the line item would be how many actual rows, in other words. But again, generally it's units that matter the most. Sometimes they match up, sometimes they're not the same. So then we see our average sales price, our total before discounts, and total after discounts. Then the percentage of charges, so you can see how much of your revenue was coming from each of those sources. Your cost of goods percentage, your profit, percentage of profit, your margin, and your total tax. So those are some different things that you can see on there. You can also, let me zoom back out, you can also click on this button right here, and this will show you a chart for that particular category. So here's a pie chart showing all my different manufacturers. I like the first one, second one, and the fifth one. Those have value, but the line chart and the area chart really only have value under other circumstances, such as if you're tracking by the month or year or something. So really you're going to focus on the first, second, and fifth charts. So you can see on here the total number of revenue, and if you look very closely, you can see the total number of units for Phonak and Resound and Signia, etc. So I'm going to close that and show you one other thing. What if I didn't want to include a particular manufacturer in the mix? I could click Omit, and then the Oticon products would go away. And so now my numbers change as far as my percentage of units. My pie chart would change a little bit as too. My graph in this case. So you can certainly do that. You can also do things like this. Let's zoom back out so you can see a little bit better. I can come over here to the Omit button, and I can omit all kinds of things, and it'll give me a different report. So I can say, I really don't want to see Boynton Beach in there. That's our primary office. I want to see how my other offices have done total. Or I want to omit a particular clinician, or I want to omit, in this case it wouldn't really matter, they're all hearing instruments, but I could from another report. I could, as I've just done, omit a particular manufacturer, but I did that easier by the Omit button on the left. I could say I don't want any particular circuits that might be in there, or sizes, if I wanted to omit my RIC products, for example, and on and on. So I think it makes sense there. Finally, at the bottom, though, I can omit third-party payers. That's something you might use very often, because a third party, let's say you're working with True Hearing, may actually substantially bring down your average sales price, and you don't really want to factor those in when you're looking at some of your numbers. So I just click that button, and it will remove anything that's a third-party pay there. I could do the same thing to say omit lyrics, and that would then adjust if I had any lyrics in the mix. And the same kind of thing again, I can omit positive quantities, and that would show me just my returns. Well, unfortunately I can't show you that right now because I don't have any returns in here, but that might be helpful to just kind of show all the hearing aids that were returned, or all the hearing aids except for returns. So look at omitting positive or negative quantities if that has any value to you. In the same way, I can constrain. To constrain means, instead of omit, which is asking a group to leave, constrain means make it smaller based on a particular criteria. Everyone else will leave the report. So I could say, just show me one office. Just show me 1 month. Just show me a circuit or a supplier, etc. And in this case, let's just try that. I'm going to constrain it to Phonak, and there you go. So now I've just constrained it to Phonak. So again, that might have value. Obviously, the number or percentage of units is going to be 100%, because that's what I pulled up. Let's do another report based on circuit. It takes a little bit longer to pull that up. Now this top one here is actually blank because we had a circuit that was not ever filled in. So you can actually go and find that under this button called Line Item List at the top middle. But for now, I just omitted that. And so now I see here's this long report here. Well, I may want to constrain this to just a particular supplier. So once again, let's constrain that. And so now I have a different group. Well, I can also constrain manually. Remember under the omit, I said constrain, I meant to say omit. I can omit all my lyrics just like that, but I also can, down here on the left-hand side, I could say omit this one and omit this one. And while I'm at it, I can omit maybe this cross binaural, or excuse me, bicross. So I've just omitted that. And then when I look at my report, it's going to look a little bit different, maybe a little cleaner. It's not going to include some of those products I didn't want to be in there. Okay, so the Audios here, I can just omit that family, or just omit individual items, I should say. So let's just omit everything that says Audio just for the heck of it. And I got a couple more. And now let's look at our report. It's going to look a little bit different. So my pie chart sometimes gets really busy looking, and pie charts are great for some things, but they look really muddy and sometimes the words run over each other. I'm sorry about that, but it's a real estate issue. There's only so much room to display all that. So a pie chart will work well unless you have a lot of very small numbers, then they tend to run together. So this is a different kind of a horizontal chart there. So that's going to base on your found set in your report, and whatever's showing here will show in the chart. Let's go a step further, and let's say once again I'm going to do this by supplier. Takes a minute to pull them all up, but then I can come over here to number 3. We looked at omit and constrain, but this is really cool. You've got just dozens of more reports that are available. We wanted to do this so that you could break it down even further. So I don't want to just see how I've done by supplier. I want to break it down and say, I want to see by supplier and then by month. So let's do that and see what we get. So now I see my Oticons, and again, I can omit those from the group if I didn't want them in the report. I can see all my Phonacs and my Resounds and all my different products by month, and so that might have some value. By clicking here, I can see, how I'm doing each month. This is fictitious data, so it's not necessarily going to be realistic that I did that well in August and that poorly in December, but I think you get the idea. And again, the pie chart tends to run together, sometimes even worse than this, depending on how many variables are in there. So let's just do a couple of more. I can subcategorize by, let's say by supplier and then technology. So I can see how I've done, and in this case I have a group that uses the technology level AGX 13579, whatever. You could break it down again by entry level, mid-level, advanced level, etc. So you can see all these different technologies by manufacturer name. And again, really, there's just a number of different ways that you can sort that, kind of play around with it and see what you think. But there's some really nice reports. Well, after you've done that, you can export that information as a summary, as you see here, or you can export it as detail. Now, the summary is just going to give you a basic summary, maybe not as advanced as what you're looking at here, but the detail will give you all of the patient names as well. So play around with those as well and see what you think as far as your export capabilities. You may have to manipulate things in Excel a little bit to get the totals the way you want them, but I think you might find them helpful. Let's just do that real quick based on supplier, I guess. See what we get here. So this is just telling me just supplier. Here's my Phonacs, my Resound, my Signia, Starkey, and Widex products. Remember, I omitted the Oticon products from the group, but you can actually add your totals at the end if desired, and that'll give you a nice report there. So the export options here will be for a number of categories, and just choose the one you want, and whether you want it to be a summary. Actually, let's look real quick at a detailed report, and that'll give you an idea of what that looks like. Now that's going to take longer because there's more information to export, but here you're getting not just a summary, you're getting all kinds of stuff. And in this case, let me bring this report over just a little bit there. So there's a lot of different columns and different things to look at here, but you might find that to be relatively helpful. And a couple other things, you can print the report here. the displayed report. You can turn it into a PDF. You can, let's just do that with circuits. I'm going to rerun the report. So we'll do a circuit report. It's going to print whatever the displayed report is. I'll omit that one that I don't know what it is. And then I'll click this PDF button right here. And it brings it, I don't know if you can see that. Let me stretch this to accommodate my video window. But I think you get the idea here. So this is a nice report of all the different circuits I've sold, including average sales price, cost of goods, things like that. So that might have some value to you if you export it. And then we can also click this button right here, and this just shows us the detail of what we're looking at as far as the patient. So I don't even have to leave the screen. I can see all that information right here. So let's just do a quick example. If I say this month and then run a report by supplier, and then I want to look here, and you see these are just the limited number I have in here of my sample invoices for just this month. So you can see who those are behind the scenes, even though they're not showing here. They're just showing the Phonex, Signia, and Widex products there. So I think I've covered all that. Again, we can turn it into a PDF. You can actually go to the printable report screen, and then you have some different printing options here, and I don't really want to print that now because you wouldn't see that. So I think I've covered all of that. Keep in mind then that when you pull up a report, you can go to the line item list or the invoice list or the payment list and see all that information here as a table, kind of like an Excel file, and manipulate that data here too if you'd like to. So hopefully that gives you a good idea of what the financial tracking module does. And we'll create additional videos in the future, but I wanted to make sure you could have a quick overview of how that system works. Thanks very much for taking the time to watch.